Russia, most of it for The Guardian. She was the first Western journalist to report on the Russian punk rock collective Pussy Riot. Do I really have to say that tonight? And she won praise from readers and criticism from the Kremlin for her insightful reporting on Russia's slide back into Soviet-era attitudes. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome World News editor at BuzzFeed News, Miriam Elder.
Hi, everybody. We have already heard one story of exile this evening with Patricia. Now, unfortunately, we are going to hear of another brave reporter forced to flee. Afra Nasser is from Yemen. To give you an idea of the military and political turmoil in Yemen, it's a country which until recently had 4 governments all claiming legitimacy. Now it has 3. The fighting is relentless. Afra's reporting put her in danger, and she fled to Sweden. From there, she has built up an important online following for reporting on the plight of her homeland.
I was a kid in Yemen, a teenager, I think. I've always loved the smell of newspapers. This job is the thing that makes me jump out of my bed every morning. I got into blogging late 2010 with the spark of the Arab Spring revolutions. I came to Sweden to study for, just a couple of weeks, and Yemen was making the headlines with the violence and armed fights.
Afraح was threatened in 2011 by former President Saleh supporters, and she wrote a blog at the time saying, "You're not going to silence me."
Afra is an inspiration to women journalists around the world. In 2011, when all of the uprisings started, she filled a really important void by blogging about Yemen in English. And so her coverage became a really important reference point for international media around the world.
Right now I'm starting an e-magazine. We think platforms like blogging and others as if they were just an alternative medium. But in my opinion, that really underestimate the importance of those platforms. I write about really painful, miserable, and the despair of people. It's not fun, but I think it's very, very important to tell those stories.
What she's gone through represent a lot of her colleagues who cannot operate inside the country because they get threatened, they get killed. Yemen is one of the underreported humanitarian crises resulting from military conflict in the Middle East.
And she's really become a leading voice talking about not only what journalism can do, but also the importance that blogging has played for women.
It's very important for me to tell, the international community or the world about what's going on in Yemen.
It is my great pleasure to present the 2017 International Press Freedom Award to Afra Nasser.
Thank you, Miriam. What an honor for me to be here tonight. As a teenager, I remember I was being glued to TV watching Christiana Amanpour and thinking I want to be a journalist like her. Be careful of what you wish for. Being a journalist in Yemen has always been like walking through a minefield. In a media landscape dominated by partisanship, a deadly path with many forms of oppression awaited independent journalists. But when Yemen's 2011 uprising happened, we dared to imagine a free press. But as the country underwent a violent power struggle between old and new powers, the one thing that they agreed on was to make life hell for all independent journalists. My story might sound dreadful, but it's nothing comparing to what my colleagues suffer in the war in Yemen. Intimidation, displacement, forced disappearance, detention, torture, persecution, and even being used as human shields at military checkpoints, being killed in airstrikes or on the battlefield, and even getting assassinated. What's happening to Yemeni journalists gives a glimpse into a suffering a society suffers as a whole. Death has become the norm in every household in Yemen, and yet the blockade imposed on Yemen by all warring sides has also prevented Yemeni stories from reaching the world. And for that, I want to thank all imprisoned Yemeni journalists who refuse to be part of a propaganda system. I want to pay tribute to international journalists who are determined to put Yemen in the news agenda despite all the obstacles. And I want to thank my editors, without whose interest in publishing the work of a freelance journalist I wouldn't have been widely read. And I want to thank my second home, Sweden, which opened its doors when I had no shelter. And I want to thank my mother for her bottomless support. And I want to thank CPJ for demonstrating for all Yemenis that their stories matter too. For me, being here tonight is not to represent Yemeni journalists only, but all Yemenis who feel abandoned by world leaders and international media that are not covering their suffering sufficiently. And I think let's make this ceremony a turning point. Let's call for world leaders not to watch with apathy as atrocities are committed in Yemen. Let's use the power of the media in solidarity with the weak. Let's make sure international media are on the right side of history. Thank you.